Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Naruto Was the Child of Dark Prophecy Part 6. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
If the wind was already strong before Naruto jumped out of the car, it became a gale. The king turned around, put his back to the ground, and put his arms out wide. His eyes controlled his fall. Far above him, 14 retrieval vehicles hummed and whirred quietly as they waited. People in hot water country looked up as the sky got darker and the wind got stronger. They gaped and gasped in horror as the sky slowly got darker and small red dots started to flow out of the 14 bigger red dots, all led by a man with red rings around his eyes and a black coat. Soon, the sky went from being blue and peaceful to being red and dark. Naruto's grin got bigger and bigger, and his eyes got bigger and bigger as he measured how far away his forces were. He nodded when his platinum rank inventor told the bronze ranks to slow down and give their king space through the kingdom's radio wave. Naruto tucked his body in and flipped forward, his body slowly bursting into golden-orange fire. The king's whiskers grew longer, and 9 golden tails grew from his tailbone. Finally, 2 golden-orange triangles, which looked like fox tails, popped up 2 inches above his head. As he called on his Kyuubi chakra, the red in his Rinnegan eyes got brighter. He wanted to see what would happen. An ordinary Rinnegan made the person who had it smarter, so they could remember things like jutsu and written knowledge even after their eyes were taken out. This didn't mean they could copy jutsu like the Sharingan, and it didn't mean they could just use the Preta path to absorb the information through the sender's chakra or the Naraka path to absorb the information through the victim's soul. However, if the Rinnegan holder tried hard enough, he could come up with ways to copy the jutsu with a high rate of success. Naruto had changed and strengthened his Rinnegan, which helped him run his large kingdom. But that wasn't all the king could do with his Rinnegan. The teen's body exploded, and fire began to spin around him in a deadly vortex. The ground was getting close, and the country's shinobi were getting ready to attack with kunai, senbon, arrows, and chains. But the king crossed his arms, and a loud thud shook the ground, sending the shinobi flying away. The ninjas on the ground let out a terrified scream as a huge foot fell from the sky and crushed them. A second foot joined in and kicked the daimyo's palace out of the ground. 9 fiery tails then joined in and smashed the palace into pieces, killing the daimyo and his family. The huge 9-tailed beast, which could be seen, roared up into the sky and swung its tail around. Naruto stood in the beast's head and told it to move. Then his eyes flashed again, and black armor slowly crept up the beast's arms, covered its torso, and then moved down to its legs and feet. As the beast punched its arm through a large group of frantic shinobi, red fire grew all over its body. A red shirt flared out over its body, and black pants and obsidian black boots finished it off. Toxic fire crackled on the Kyuubi's chakra back, and a black overcoat flashed into view. It moved with the Kyuubi's tails to do even more damage. The big beast, which Naruto had full control over, opened its huge mouth and roared up to the sky. Arr. It snarled and kept going on its unstoppable rampage as the king's ninjas landed at the country's border and set up a barrier to stop more people from fleeing. Several squads were sent to take care of the people who had already left. The soldiers looked at their king with awe and admiration as his tail-bearing beast stomped around in the same clothes he was wearing, causing chaos and killing anyone who looked at it. For a bronze rank to be able to say that he or she had seen their king in battle and could say that they fought with him, the fire in their hearts kept getting worse. Inventors weren't exactly unpopular in the kingdom, and a bronze rank inventor wasn't all that popular. But they could see that after the invasion, their division would get more applicants because their king had visited them. Even though it was the first time he did it, the teen didn't find it strange to summon the Kyuubi cloak. His Rinnegan gave him complete control over all kinds of chakra, including beast chakra. But he was also using the Uchiha chakra he had absorbed from Itachi and Obaido, who were both dead by this point, to make what Obaido had called a Susanoo. Even though at this point it was more like half Kitsune and half Susanoo. The beast's right hand suddenly had a purple sword that flashed. It brought the sword down on a hot spring, absorbing the heat into the blade and sealing the spring away with a small explosion. Before the beast dropped to its knees in front of a group of hot water ninjas running away, Naruto jumped out of the Kyuubi's head and landed in front of the ninjas. Naruto turned his head and ran toward them. As he passed a burning body, he picked up a tanto that had been left on the ground. When the ninjas saw him coming, the last of their courage seemed to come back, and they realized that one person was going up against more than 30 Chunin and Jounin. They ran right back at him, swinging their weapons and punching the air in anger. The king's smile turned into a small grin, and he slashed into the first person. He skidded to a stop and threw a straight kick into the torso of another shinobi, blasting him into 3 more ninjas. He jumped backwards and stabbed a kunoichi in the head with his smoky weapon. He then dropped behind her, drove his knee into her back, and threw her into her other teammates. Naruto twirled his sword in his hand and looked around at the wary ninjas who had gathered around him. He hummed quietly as his wild hair partially covered his eyes. He bobbed his head silently and gripped the weapon tightly, crossing it behind him in a reverse and bending his knees in a ready stance. This was similar to how he had taught Satoshi, his head of rescue and support, to hold his bow staff. The king's smirk got bigger, and his dark eyes started to get smaller. As Naruto's eyes tapped into the outer path, he was able to see faster than any other human. The fire and small explosions around them rolled to a stop slowly, and the smokestacks that rose into the sky wailed. As it finally got dark, he could see the dust in the air freeze in place. Even the 9 tails that didn't move stood still. Naruto's eyes darted around him, taking in the 25 ninjas around him, before stopping on the man in front of him. As he shot forward, the ground cracked under his feet. He hit the man in the face with his knee, then turned in the air and smashed his feet into the dead man's chest, throwing him to the person on the other side of the circle. He slashed his blade down, cutting through the man's shoulder to his heart. The small organ tore out of his chest and hit a kunoichi in the face. Then Naruto held the katana in front of him with a backwards grip, grabbed his elbow with the right forearm of his other hand, and bent his knees again. In a quick burst of fire, the Rinnegan king zipped around. When the world started to move again, the king stopped in the middle. He did the motions of putting his sword in its sheath on his hip, and the how water ninjas spat blood out of their mouths, fell to their knees, and landed on their faces with thin cuts on their necks and through their hearts. Naruto put the blade on his right shoulder, tapped himself behind the ear, and said, "Send me to the division head's office." "Patching you over, sir," the soldier stuttered, then quickly put the king in touch with the head of his division. "This spot is Nirvana, my lord. Clean up this area and start pumping as soon as possible. Take as many tankers of natural gas back to the kingdom as you can until the ground is dry and can't give any more." The 19-year-old girl waved for 10 squads of bronze ranks to follow her into the country. They lifted off the ground with self-built propulsion fans that whirred under their boots and converged on the main places where natural gas was being pumped out. The woman told more soldiers to go to the other 5 spots and start building their siphoning engine, which would pull the gas out of the ground and into tanks. The last thing she did was ask for a container retrieval vehicle, which was made especially for moving liquids that could explode. The gas would be cleaned up many times and hooked up to the gas line in the kingdom, which led to homes. Some of the houses were now using solar energy, and more people were making the switch as well. Since there were no longer any individual generators, the king didn't have to use gas to power them. When his scientists and intelligence agents came up with a better way to cook and do other things, gas would be changed into something else. Back with Naruto, the king threw away the katana and started walking over the dead bodies around him. He put his hands in the pockets of his overcoat and kicked over a smoking body that was in his way. When he walked into a line of bronze soldiers, they all got down on their right knees, bowed their heads, and put their right hands on their hearts. "Don't worry," Naruto said, and they stood up. When he saw how happy they were, he couldn't help but smile back. He kept walking until he reached the border, where a few stragglers were being killed by bronze soldiers. They showed respect by kneeling down again, and the king gave them a signal to get up. He looked at what they were doing and laughed a little as they rushed to clean up the dead bodies. "Are any people hurt?" A random bronze rank said, "None, sir. We're just destroying the hot springs and taking the money." Even though the soldier didn't have a silver or gold rank that let him take direct command as a squad captain, he was put in charge of a group of 5 inventors. Naruto gave them a nod and walked by. "Have fun." The king took his time walking to the hot spring at the far end of the village, near the north entrance to the country. The roof had caved in and the walls were black from fire. This made him think of the kneeling Kyuubi in the distance, and as he turned around, he saw the beast sputter and disappear in a small gust of fire. Naruto bobbed his head silently and put his armored hands deeper into the pockets of his overcoat. His eyes lit up for a moment, and the broken wooden door to the hot spring opened slowly, letting him in. He shut the door and walked past the empty receptionist's area, admiring the hot spring's decor, or what was left of it. Naruto walked up to the front desk and looked over the edge. When he didn't see anyone, he pursed his lips. Just a bloody fall and a dead body without a head. He hummed and shut his eyes tight. He said, "I could have sworn." He gave a shrug, and a thick book fell into his hand. He looked over the list of private hot springs and slowly moved his black armored fingers down the list, stopping at the ones that had already been reserved. The place was empty, and the body was lying in a pool of blood at the back of the receptionist's chair. He tapped the last private spring and wrote down the number, then threw away the book and started walking steadily to the end of the building to the only private spring that wasn't booked. He got to the room quickly, and with a mental command, the lock on the door exploded inwards. He pushed his left toe forward to open the door and closed it behind him with a small backwards kick, keeping his hands safe in his pockets. He took a look around the partly untouched spring, which had clean, sparkling, warm water bubbling in a tiled pool, and a rack for hanging towels to his right, next to the door. The light was soft and protected from splashes of water, and the walls were tiled in baby blue and soft purple to make it feel calm. As Naruto looked around, he nodded. He didn't see any blood or a dead body. Instead, he saw a cracked wall and a corner of the roof that was dark with soot. He had picked a room where there was probably no dead body. He took his right hand out of his pocket and hit his earbud with it. "Patch me over to Naruto." "Patching you over, my lord." As Naruto was connected to his sister, there was a short buzz of static. "Hey bro, I mean Naruto, my lord." Naruto sighed because he thought she was saluting him. "How's chill?" he asked to change the subject from his sister doing what he wanted. The girl, all the way in frigid country, hidden chill, sniffed behind her plain white mask and sat on top of the main communications building of the hidden village, looking out at the white, snow-covered hidden village with a sad sigh. "This is so boring. Why did you let me come? You're the one who wanted to be a soldier. All new soldiers, no matter how high up they are, start out with easy missions before they get better ones." Naruto laughed when his sister whimpered. "Try to enjoy yourself over there, sister." "Well, I can't have fun here because everyone is so scared of us," she said, crossing her legs and nodding her head as a silver rank landed next to her and jumped off, the wind from his feet leading him to another building. She huffed and crossed her arms in a mean way as she said, "They don't want anything to do with us. Why can't we just kill everybody and move on to the next village? Because I want to keep my promise. Also, after this is all over and father is dead, there will still be a global fighting tournament. And the more countries that fight, the more fun it will be." He smiled and turned around, walking backwards onto the hot water and balancing on it. "How about this? Every loser country would be wiped out, and you, dear sister, would be in charge of that. Does that make you happy?" The girl sat up and smiled brightly from behind her mask. "Very happy. Thanks, bro. I mean, my lord Naruto. I really need to get used to saying it." Naruto begged the girl, "Please don't say it," and waited patiently for her to answer. She let out a longing sigh and tightened her waist-length, red ponytails. She waved at a silver rank medic who walked by her and then dropped to the ground and flew straight to another communications tower. "Fine," she said, and watched as a chill shinobi crept up the building towards her. Her bright purple eyes shone through the holes in her mask. People in the village were hiding in their homes, so there was no one on the streets. The ninja walked past her as he went into the building, and she didn't pay him any attention. Her silver armor, like all full-body armor made in the kingdom, was indestructible, as were her skin and bones. He would be at a disadvantage if he attacked her from behind. Also, the man would be quickly dealt with if he tried to attack her hunter ninja friends who were in the building. She forgot about the man and went back to talking with her brother. "Tell me again why you want Minato Jr. to be in the kingdom." "He's father's child, and he hates him just as much as we do, according to Sasori's research. The bad thing is ... he looks so much like father." He clenched his fists and tightened his jaw. In chill, Naruto did the same thing the whole time. "I don't want the kid anywhere near me," she said. Then she felt a small bump under her, like the building had coughed, but she didn't pay attention to it. "I want to say the same thing, but I can't," he said. The king slowly turned around on the warm, bubbling spring and saw a pair of small, yellow eyes on a slight bulge in the tiled wall. "I need to leave." Naruto felt a tap on her shoulder, and when she looked up, she saw the sky-blue eyes of Mora, the head hunter. This made her frown. He jerked his left thumb over his shoulder, and she turned her head to look behind him. The same chill shinobi was on his knees, tied with tight ninja wire. The middle of his flak jacket was cut open, revealing rows and rows of dead explosive tags. A suicide bomber wearing a suicide vest, and the silver-ranked redhead let him pass her. She cursed into her earpiece, but she didn't know it. Naruto's forehead creased with worry, and the girl quickly stood up and said, "I'll talk to you later." Naruto, out. When the line went dead, Naruto put his hands back into the pockets of his overcoat and looked at the pair of eyes with his eyebrows raised. Then he finally figured it out. The king snapped his fingers and said, "Ah, you must be Zetsu." He then put his hand back in his pocket. "I know a lot about you," he said. The plant man was quiet for a few moments before he fully slid out of the wall and stood on the water in his Akatsuki cloak. Naruto quickly looked him over and saw that half of his face was black and the other half was white, and that a big Venus flytrap covered his head. You rule the kingdom of Tsukai. Naruto gave a crooked smile and a shrug. It looks like I am. The plant man started to walk around Naruto while the king just stood still. When I look at you, King Naruto, it's hard not to be offended, he said. His voice went from light and playful to deep and evil. Naruto turned his head to look at Zetsu, and his black Rinnegan with red rings kept a close eye on the creature. Why does that happen? Zetsu stopped again in front of Naruto and kept going. For someone so young to have a power strong enough to bend the heavens and destroy the earth. Zetsu's head slowly turned to the left, and his yellow eyes got smaller. To lead an army that would jump into the jaws of death if it pleased you. To command respect and strike fear into the hearts of even the most battle-hardened humans and non-humans. Again, Naruto gave a shrug. They pushed me to be what I am. Zetsu scoffed and nodded. I guess you're right. If your father hadn't sent you and your sister away, and if your sister hadn't been killed. Zetsu spread his arms wide to show the small signs of destruction in the once peaceful hot spring. None of this would have happened, he said. Naruto gave Zetsu a small smirk, then stood still and looked at him with his godly eyes. Why are you here, Zetsu? Why have you been following me? He had been asking the plant man since he got out of the flying vehicle. He was smart, so it wasn't that hard for him. Why aren't you already dead? He remembered telling Nagato and Konan to watch out for Zetsu, but he didn't want to blame them because Zetsu was slippery, as they had told him. Zetsu then looked over Naruto. He looked at his red shirt with the words Sky King written in gold across the chest, his ninja-grade black pants, the teen's black coat that barely touched the water, and the black armor that covered his whole body except for his head. Zetsu put his head down and said, I'm here to ask to join your forces in a formal way. Is that right? Naruto asked, and the plant man tried to ignore how funny the teen sounded. And what could you do for me that I don't already have someone better at? I'm a good scout and an expert at sneaking into places. There's nothing I can't do and nothing I can't find out. I have about 6,000 spies under my command, and they were able to acquire enough information to make my kingdom basically immune to grounder techniques and tactics. This has been going on right in front of your eyes for the past 7 years, the king said, pointing to Zetsu to emphasize the length of time. Being a spy doesn't just mean getting information when you're told to, Naruto said, putting his hands back in his pockets. Stay alert behind the enemy forces, keep your eyes and ears open, and write down everything you see. Try again, why would I need your help? I've been around for more than 500 years, so I know techniques, strategies, jutsu, and other things from better times than the present. Naruto walked towards Zetsu and said, then I can just absorb your memories and take all of that for myself. Zetsu instinctively moved away as Naruto approached. As the Rinnegan King got closer, he took 3 steps back and his whole body locked up, lifted off the ground, and stayed there. Killing you is much easier, Zetsu. And then no. Naruto put a finger in front of his mouth and shook his head. The creature's face was hidden by an invisible pair of hands, and his voice was muffled. I don't have time to make you laugh anymore, Zetsu, he said as he put his right hand on the creature's head and grinned. Soul eating. 6 p.m. The bronze-level Tsukai inventors lived in makeshift camps, hidden hot springs, country in hot water. At the end of the video, Sakura cut the youngest son of the Yondaime in the back of the neck. The girl with pink hair sighed and put her hands on her hips as Sai walked up to the boy and lifted him up onto his shoulder. The girl rubbed her wrist, and Sai did the same. Their bodies rippled, and silver armor that looked like scales started to grow on their arms and legs. When they heard a small whoosh above them, they looked up and saw a standard retrieval vehicle land in front of them with a soft thump. The truck's body shook and threw off the illusion it had used to hide itself, using the panic of the Konoha people to hide its presence. The cinema blimps were still in sight of the village, but everyone could see the powerful message the king of the Tsukai sent. He was not happy that Naruto was coming back. A big group of leaf ninjas didn't believe the video because they thought it was edited to make their Yondaime look bad. However, another group, which was slightly smaller than the first, was out for Minato's blood. They surrounded the Hokage Tower and tried to get in, but the cage's guards and other loyal shinobi stopped them. The back of the truck opened, and Hamato Toshi, the head of intelligence and interrogation, stomped down and stood to the side, jerking his head into the truck and crossing his strong arms. Sai walked in first and put his teammate, or better yet, his former teammate, on a seat and buckled him in. He was taken to hot water country, which was a 4-minute flight if they took their time, which they did. They got there at 2:55 p.m., but they were told to keep the boy locked up until Naruto was done taking care of things that were most important to him. The king was sitting in a makeshift command tent and telling troops to march into Earth Country. The plan was for his scouts and supporter soldiers to block all of the country's exits, while his frontline soldiers would slowly march in, take over key villages, and make their way to Iwagakure, where they would wait for him. The next set of orders he gave were about Iron Country. Some of his grounder soldiers and spies had asked to join the invasion. He wasn't against the idea, and the soldiers were more than enough to handle the samurai country. But the king was picky when it came to plans. The redhead told his subordinates for 2 long hours how to sneak into Iron Country and beat down the samurai. Naruto ruffled his hair with his fingers and took a tired breath. Then he got up and looked at the light blue and red images on the wall in front of his makeshift desk. 50 spies on the ground, all of whom were projections, stood in neat rows. "Do you all understand?" "Sir, yes sir." He called out to Nagato and said, "Good." Nagato, who had the Rinnegan, used his diva path to nod when he heard his name. "Since you're the most experienced, I want you to report to me often, if you can, every hour." "Of course, Naruto," he said. "May I speak, my lord?" Fu asked, and Naruto gave her a sign to say something. People behind her also wanted to ask her, "Will you be going to Iron Country soon?" They said it in a low whisper. "Yes, but only if we march on Iwa first," he told them. They seemed happy with his answer. "You should go into Iron 12 hours after Iwa." "Got it, sir." "Yes, sir." Dismissed. After that, the king had to deal with the problem his sister had caused by not doing her job. He stood up and stretched. His shoulders popped and his neck rolled. He put on his black overcoat and stood with his arms crossed in front of his desk. He didn't care that Seibagu was watching and writing down everything he did. "Video call to Division Head Mora," he told Seibagu. The cyborg bowed her head and then lifted it back up to look at the ceiling. For a very short time, she saw blue static in her eyes, and then the headhunter came down from the light coming from the ceiling. The man in the white mask got down on his knees and put his hand over his heart. "Naruto is my lord." At ease, the man stood back up and put his arms down by his sides. Naruto held back a groan and closed his eyes as he pinched the bridge of his nose. "You said my sister did what?" "She was supposed to secure the roof of Chill's main communications building, but she let a Chill shinobi pass by her. That shinobi was wearing an explosive tag vest under his jounin vest, and if there hadn't been a squad of rescue soldiers in the building, the explosion would have killed all of your soldiers. Before a Tsukai citizen could become a rescue soldier, he or she had to be able to sense whether or not something was high or low. Because they could sense and stop danger, these soldiers also worked as firefighters for the kingdom. Even for a rescue soldier, it wasn't easy to freeze explosive tags, especially after they had been set off, but there were several ways they could do it. Support, rescue, medics, and scouts were all groups of soldiers that had to be part of every military mission of the kingdom, whether they sent one person or a whole squad. These ninjas were very important to missions. Naruto rubbed his face and then asked, "Let's start with the bomber. What have you done about him so far?" "First, I asked for an interrogation team from the kingdom to question the bomber, and Chill's leader to find out if they worked together or if the bomber did it on his own. Then, per your orders, I had the intelligence soldiers shut down all other ways of communication within and outside the country." Naruto kept his fingers on the bridge of his nose and nodded. He remembered that he had told the intelligence soldiers to shut down all other ways of communication. "Then I told Naruto, who was a silver rank, to read the Tsukai Forces Procedure and Command Act, which was the standard book that every soldier had to know well. The book was written by the heads of the 10 soldier divisions and approved by Naruto. They made sure to include as much as possible about a soldier's life and the punishments for not following orders completely. Due to how quickly Naruto was brought into the Tsukai forces at first, she wasn't told much about the SFPC Act. After the global invasion, she would have been told to read and learn all the rules written in it. She had to read the book because, even though the division heads were in charge of their own divisions, Naruto, the king, had made it a rule that no soldier could be punished or court-martialed if they didn't know the rules that govern their actions and protocols. So, the SFPC Act was taught in all 4 years of the Tsukai Forces Academy. This way, no soldier could say they didn't know the rules. Naruto nodded his head. He knew that the girl couldn't be court-martialed in the usual way unless she knew the rules in the act. If he remembered correctly, a hunter ninja who was told to keep an eye out for danger in an important grounder building with many soldiers inside was given a 2-month suspension, a probation drop in rank, which meant that her rank would be temporarily lowered until she proved herself again, and she would have to work in the hunter ninja division's filing and recording section, where all missions and bounties were recorded. That's right. As you told me, my lord Naruto, I tried not to be soft on her. You did well. What else could she get in trouble for? A month of border patrol duty, but that won't happen until after the invasion. Very good. Naruto nodded and said, tell her I'll talk to her soon. Of course, my lord, Naruto said. Then he cut the link. The king sighed and sat down at his desk. He had the power to free his sister from whatever punishment was waiting for her, but she had asked him to stay out of it and just do his job as king. In the Tsukai kingdom, all of the power went back to the 16 Rinnegan king who sat on the throne. No matter how harsh his rules seemed, they were always followed to the letter. So far, Naruto's rules have been fair for the people of the Tsukai kingdom. This didn't mean that the people in his kingdom were submissive to any authority over them. Instead, they were submissive and fiercely loyal to the throne, and they only obeyed the soldier and civilian division heads and other delegated leaders because Naruto chose them. Naruto was the only one who could give these people power, and he only did so when he thought they deserved it. His people's belief that the Rinnegan king was a powerful god helped. That was how things worked in the Tsukai kingdom. Naruto could tell his subordinates to flash promote Naruto to platinum rank, and they would do it without question. Another reason was that they saw Naruto as a powerful person, though not as powerful as their king. They put her on a pedestal above the division ranks. The girl also knew this, and she had begged her brother, the king, not to do it. Naruto rubbed his face, got up from his desk, and walked out of his tent. He laughed as he looked around his tent and saw dozens of small campfires with bronze ranks sitting around them, eating ration packs and laughing at stories that only a few of them told. His soldiers were still wearing their red shirts, black pants, bronze shoulder plates, bronze forearm guards, bronze shin guards, and bronze boots. They were ready to defend their king if anyone tried to attack. The redhead put his hands in his pockets and looked over the mumbling soldiers sitting around warm fires. He saw the retrieval vehicles parked in a row in the far back, in front of the sparse hot water forests. There, a few vehicle drivers used water jutsu to spray down the sides of blood, and the inventors double-checked the engines. Naruto started walking forward, nodding his head in response to greetings and giving a small smile to the bronze ranks that jumped to their feet and snapped salutes. As he moved through the camps, his personal maid followed him with a camera and took pictures of everything he did. As he passed the last fire, he stopped for a moment to look at the vehicles. The drivers and inventors were lined up next to their own vehicles and gave a salute to their king. Naruto waved with his right hand to tell them to relax. He was still looking around with his red-ringed Rinnegan eyes until he saw a tall man in platinum rank armor standing to the left of the vehicle in a submissive position. Naruto walked over to Hamato, who was in charge of intelligence and interrogation, and gave him a nod. Lord Naruto, the mission to Konoha to get the items was a success. Naruto laughed as he looked at the two younger silver rank teens kneeling next to Hamato. Both of them had their heads down and their right hands on their hearts. He told 13-year-old silver ranks, I can see that. They stood up and put their hands behind their backs, puffing out their chests. How was your time there? Mildly eventful, sir, said Sai, and Naruto looked over them and nodded. Sai, were you able to deal with the root ninjas who went rogue? Yes, sir, but I did what you asked and left Yamato Tenzo. And Kakashi, right now, he's keeping assassins from getting to the Yondaime. The boy with black hair said with a straight face. Naruto said, it sounds like the video has caused a rift in Konoha. As you said, sir, Hamato said, bowing low. The other two soldiers did the same. When he said Sakura, the girl suddenly sat up straight. Sir, according to your last report, Tsunade Senju is interested in how you train. Yes, sir. She has been teaching me about medical ninjutsu and fighting techniques. I hope that hasn't messed up your personal training. A training scroll was sent to each grounder spy. Sakura and Sai got theirs a year before they were promoted to genin. The girl nodded quickly, and Naruto looked past them into the back of the truck. He didn't mean to, but he started grinding his teeth when he saw a boy with big, bright blue eyes staring at him quietly. The king rolled his neck, making a horrible popping sound, and waved for the soldiers to leave him alone. The division heads and the two Tsukai spies bowed and left, the silver ranks to join the conversation at a random campfire, and the platinum rank to meet his fellow division head. Naruto walked up the truck's ramp and stood over the boy who was strapped into a seat and heavily restrained. As he looked down at the boy, the redhead's jaw tightened and his fists cracked in his pockets. His face was emotionless, but he was filled with a whirlwind of fiery rage that bubbled and spat violently, threatening to burst out of his body and destroy the country. Junior put his head down and looked down, and he was trying hard not to cry. Again, the fact that he looked almost exactly like his father ruined his first impression. He had hoped that meeting his brother for the first time, if he ever did, would be a happy event. Naruto muttered and grunted. My first thought is to squash you so hard that you disappear. Minato Jr. didn't say anything. The only sound was the 13-year-old Konoha Genin's steady breathing. He worked hard to keep his heart together. But I won't, said the king, letting out a deep breath and taking his eyes off the boy's blonde hair. Junior heard footsteps on the metal floor of the car and a sigh as someone sat down on the seat next to him. Naruto put his feet together and put his fingers together as he sat down. He turned his head slowly toward Junior, who was still looking down, and said, My spies say that you don't like your dad. The blonde turned his head to his older brother and his eyes got bigger when he saw Naruto's evil grin. He moved his head up and down in silence. Are you willing to kill the people he loves? Naruto asked slowly as his smile grew. His eyes were filled with darkness. Again, Junior bobbed his head. I will. Before that, I don't like your name. Junior said quickly, with his eyes wide and panicked, I promise I'll change it. Naruto smiled and then waited. What if? He started, then stopped and looked around for any sign of a new name. The king saw that he wasn't sure what to do, so he told the boy to calm down. Take your time. When he stood up, his eyes briefly lit up, and the boy's straps and seals broke off. When the king walked by, the boy ran after his older brother quickly. He looked over his shoulder as he walked down the ramp and asked, Can you and your team kill Kakashi? Minato would be even more broken if he killed the last student of his father. The boy with blonde hair, who didn't have a name yet, nodded. Yes, brother lord. Naruto was on the verge of shaking when he saw the title. He gave a quick scowl, but he quickly covered it up. He just nodded and let it go. Good. I'll send 5 frontline squads and a medic squad with you, Sakura, and Sai back to Konoha. Their only job is to keep other ninjas away from you 3 while you take care of Kakashi. Thank you, Lord Brother. When he heard the title again, it made Naruto angry, but he let it go. He didn't want to share his power with his brother. That was only for his twin. But it looked like Naruto was trying to avoid being queen. He would tell the boy that he could join his Tsukai force or that he could move in with their mother in a kingdom apartment. He didn't feel even a little bit of the connection he had with his sister, but a part of his mind kept telling him that he couldn't for the life of him blame the boy for looking like their father or even being their father's son. It would take a long time for him to get over seeing his father's face in his brother's faces and being called Lord Brother. Do not disappoint me, I swear on my life. The next day, an hour before sunrise, Naruto put frontline soldiers and a few inventors in hot water to finish the natural gas drain. He then sent the rest of the people to other countries while he flew to Iwagakure in a retrieval vehicle. Before sunrise, 5 a.m., Stone Earth Country's border, Stone County, a retrieval vehicle dropped down a mile from the main entrance to Earth Country, Stone Country. The big back door dropped down, and black metal boots stomped down the ramp. The owner of the boots stopped at the bottom and looked around. He saw a row of gold-ranked frontliners on the right side and a row of medics on the left that went down several feet. At the bottom, there were hundreds of other silver ranks standing at attention, with gold ranks standing behind them and bronze and copper ranks on the sides. Indra, the leader of the frontline soldiers, marched up to Naruto and stopped 10 feet away. He stomped his right foot on the ground and sharply saluted the king. Karin walked toward Naruto, stopped next to Indra, stomped the ground with her right foot, and bowed to the leader of the kingdom. Welcome to Stone Country, sir, she said politely, and Naruto smiled a little. He took a deep breath in and then let it out, enjoying the way his soldiers stood still outside the retrieval vehicles. He saw about 150 more cars a few yards away, lined up in a row and shining clean. Naruto put his hands in his pockets and nodded to his division heads. It's nice to be here, thank you. May I speak, sir? Indra asked, and Naruto waved for his soldiers to relax. Every soldier, from platinum rank to copper rank, put their hands on their sides, tucked their hands behind them, and spread their legs about 2 feet apart. For grounder forces, a military leader was never supposed to be openly saluted, especially by about 5,000 soldiers and 2 commanders. This was because it would let enemy snipers know who the head of the snake was, making the leader a target. According to the SFPC Act, which was written by the division heads and approved by Naruto, only the king, the overall commander-in-chief, and those directly appointed by him were allowed to be openly recognized by such a large force of fully capable soldiers, so that enemy snipers couldn't shoot at the commander. Support soldiers and hunter ninjas were put in certain places to keep watch. The king nodded, then Indra spoke. Stone Country has been completely tamed, and their daimyo has been killed. Her aunt has been made the new daimyo. Are there any dissenting voices? Silence, Indra said without hesitation. Naruto laughed under his breath. That is great. Well done. Indra bowed in thanks. Karin, are there any dead? A silver-rank ninjutsu frontliner stepped on a mine in the country's diamond cave, which collapsed the tunnels. The rescue soldiers were able to dig out 20 of them, but one of them is still in critical condition. Wasn't a scout sent in before they followed? Naruto asked, wrinkling his eyebrows. No, sir, Karin replied with care. They were chasing a group of stones, and they were led into the tunnel. That's not a good enough excuse, Naruto said with narrowed eyes. Make sure they are well cared for. Karin nodded, and Naruto looked at Indra with his jaw tight and his hands clenched into fists in the pockets of his black overcoat. Make sure this doesn't happen again. There is a code, a procedure, and I want it to be followed. It's why we're better, and if someone gets hurt, it's because the code wasn't followed to the letter. Indra bowed very deeply. I am truly sorry, my lord. Good. If an enemy ninja or ninjas ran into an unknown underground tunnel, the normal procedure was for a scouting team to lead the way and make sure there weren't any hidden traps before a frontline team followed. The code also said what would happen if the enemy forces attacked the scouting team. The scouts were all taught fighting styles that would keep the enemy at bay until more help arrived. What is the current state of Earth Country? The answer came from Indra, one of the 2 division heads. The country is on red alert. The borders have been closed and security around the Earth Country capital has been tightened. The Earth Daimyo and his family are currently in a panic room, and the Tsuchikage is getting ready to attack this camp in 10 minutes. Even though the spies held minor positions in Earth Country capital and Iwagakure, they were still close to their respective leaders. You would think a man as old as Unoki would be smart enough to sign the agreement scroll, Naruto said with a wry shake of his head. He's just as stubborn as A, and you all know how that turned out. Indra smiled, and Karin hid her small smile behind her left hand. Naruto could not help but wonder, though, why does Unoki want to attack this camp? There are 9 other camps, some bigger than this one, surrounding their country. Your spy says it's because this camp is closer to Iwagakure than the other camps. The king just shrugged. If that's true, then we shouldn't keep him waiting, he said and kept walking, passing the platinum ranks. The division heads turned around and went after them. Take the order, Indra. The person holding the Kubikirabachu nodded and put his index finger on the earbud in his right ear. He then followed his leader while muttering orders. Just a little bit at a time, the soldiers who were standing still around them began to move away, and move into neat rows, stomping away and getting closer to Earth Country. Many miles away, the other gold-ranked captains started giving the same orders. They put the soldiers into group squads, which were basically large squads made up of frontliners, medics, scouts, rescuers, and intelligence soldiers. 10 soldiers in 2 gold-ranked squads surrounded Naruto and the platinum ranks as the king moved closer to the border. The king of the renegades shook his head, and Indra quickly gave the order for the soldiers to move out and join other group squads. As the king got closer to the country, his overcoat flapped in the light breeze. 1,000 Tsukai soldiers stomped behind him, all in sync with each other through their earpieces. No one moved or looked away. Naruto walked in front of them as a single black focus point leading a large sea of fully capable warriors. His smile became a little twisted. A few hours before, after the cinema blimps had left, the Hokage's workplace, the house of the Hokage, Kano Hagakure no Sato, Fire County. He didn't know when the tears started falling from his eyes and running down his cheeks. He didn't know when he fell to his knees. He didn't know how long he'd been staring at the head on his desk. Jiraiya. Jiraiya is the Toad Sage. Jiraiya, one of the Sannin. The man looked back at him with one eye open and the other one broken. The blood that used to flow down the broken eye was now dry and caked up. His white hair was cut so short that it just reached the base of his neck. It was dirty with blood, most of which wasn't his, and had been burned by electricity, leaving some spots bald. His face was purple and blue from bruises, his left cheek was broken, and 4 of his front teeth were knocked out. This made his wide-eyed, gaping mouth death scream look more haunted. He was the best of the best, Minato knew that for sure. He was his teacher ... his former teacher. An unranked ninja who had the power to destroy a country if he wanted to ... and he was dead. The Hokage got to his feet slowly, and the eyes that were on him followed him as he walked to his desk, towards the head. The blonde put his right hand on Jiraiya's head and slid it down, closing the one eye that was still open and finishing by putting his fingers on the edge of his desk. He swallowed hard, and a tear slid down his cheek and fell off his chin onto the dead man's head. With his blue eyes, he saw a small, hand-sized black card lying behind the head. His left hand touched the card, not caring if there was a trap on it, and he brought his hand back to him with the card. He picked it up and clenched his teeth at the gold-inked words. He was not worth my time. The card caught on fire, and Minato watched as it crumbled into ashes. His hand dropped to his side, and he looked at his desk in silence, his eyes narrowing with anger. The ANBU flinched as the Hokage violently kicked his desk. The wooden desk hit the wall and broke in half. The chair fell over and landed on the floor, and the head rolled away. Minato grumbled and walked stiffly to his window. When he looked out and saw a sea of people surrounding the tower, his anger went away. People were shouting and pushing against the barricade that a few of his ninjas had set up to keep them back, screaming and spitting at his head. He closed his eyes. Konoha was split. It was his fault. His son had played his hand and shown the whole village his dark past. They wouldn't listen to him if he told them he did it for them. He could even feel how much his guards hated him. He didn't have to touch the ground to do this. "You've torn us apart, haven't you, demon?" he whispered to himself as he looked at the angry crowd below. "You've shown them what I can and would do for them, and now they hate me for it." He turned around and saw a man with silver hair and an orange bandana covering his face and hiding his left sharing an eye. Kakashi tried to hide how disgusted he was with his former teacher. He didn't want to believe that Minato could do such a thing to 2 3-year-olds, let alone to his own children. But as the Yondaime student, he had seen small flashes of darkness from the man over the course of his time learning from him. The man's eyes drooped for a split second before he fixed a glare on the copy ninja. "Didn't he take my son?" "Yes, sir," Kakashi said in a stiff way. They were on the Hokage's monument, and their flying vehicle took him. And the rest of his team. Al saw Sakura knock Junior out and Sai carry him to the vehicle. "So they were the demon's spies," Minato murmured. "I can't say I'm not surprised. They were good kids." He tried to smile, but just couldn't. "Were you able to follow where they were going?" "I lost sight of them after they left the Fire Country borders, but I think they are going to Iwa." Minato slowly nodded and turned around to see the chaos his decision had caused. The people who were against him were robbing stores and fighting with those who still believed in him. Minato's grim eyes reflected off the window, and he sighed and closed his eyes. "Bring back my son, Kakashi." "Yes, sir," the copy ninjas said in a low tone. "If you meet the demon," the Yondaime started, and Kakashi stopped before he could leave the room. He listened to what the man was saying without turning around. If you meet the creature do not fight it." Kakashi nodded once. "Leave him up to me." "Yes, sir." Minato flicked his wrist, and the hidden ANBU left him alone to stew. The man's body shook, and his nose wrinkled. "You took my wife, you took my son, and you took my village," he whispered. Fire licked his words, and he suddenly punched the triple reinforced window, cracking it heavily but not breaking the last layer. "I will take everything from you. I will burn it all down, and you will have to watch." He told his ANBU guard captain to gather as many ANBU squads and jounin as possible and head towards Iwagakure, with him leading the way. Yujihacho's town, borders of Iwagakure no Sato, Earth's country. Naruto couldn't help but slightly purse his lips and hold back a laugh as his head of frontline soldiers cut a town protector in half, from his head to his pelvis, and swung the sword sideways to throw the dead man into his comrade, who was killed by 3 needles to the neck by Karin, who marched behind Naruto with 2 platinum senbon launchers sticking out of the armor on her wrists. She raised her left hand and pointed at a guard who was trying to dive bomb the Rinnegan King. She stabbed him with 3 needles, and Indra finished him off by kicking him in the neck as he fell down, sending him away from their king. The platinum rank swordsman twisted his sword and stabbed it down into a man who was on the ground, choking on blood that was coming out of his neck from a cut made by a copper rank. The blood soaked into the legendary sword, and the division head put down his weapon and looked back at Naruto. The king gave the man a thumbs up as he walked leisurely through the town. The buildings were being ransacked by his forces, and families were being driven out and forced to their knees. They lined Naruto's sides as he walked by, and he didn't seem to care. His eyes were blank, and his overcoat fluttered with each step. Fire poured out of the town mayor's office, and a few gold ranks flew past him and up into the air with their flight seals. They went through a window to fight more stubborn town protectors. Karin put her left hand next to her right hand and clenched it. Then she squeezed out 3 senbon bullets and shot them into the neck of an overzealous protector who was heading straight for Naruto. The woman gasped as the needles broke off from the back of her neck and fell on her face, killing her. While the town was being destroyed and the protectors were being killed or forced to kneel with the civilians, Naruto walked calmly toward Iwa with his hands still in his pockets and his Rinnegan eyes shining with amusement. He talked to Karin over his shoulder as the girl fired 3 more bullets behind her to kill a guard who was about to stab a bronze rank. The girl thanked her briefly and flew away with her squad into another building. "These people are sure stubborn, I'll give them that." He stepped over a dead body and watched as Indra slashed and killed any of his protectors who tried to attack him. Karin walked up to her king and said in a loud voice that could be heard over the screams of pain, fires, and small explosions that were rocking the town. They are trying to slow down our progress to Iwagakure, sir. Well, it's working, Naruto said sarcastically, flashing a smile at her. He didn't turn or flinch in surprise when a protector yelled and ran to him. He looked at him with dull Rinnegan eyes and grinned. Before he could get closer than 3 feet, a gold rank flashed by and slammed his armored knee into the side of the protector's head, sending him flying away, and right into the sharp point of the waiting head cleaver. Indra shook the guy off and looked around. When Naruto raised his hand, all the soldiers stopped. The king gave a small smile as he looked around. Everyone was on their knees before him. Indra moved closer to Naruto and whispered in his ear, "Do you want me to appoint a new mayor?" Naruto slowly smiled at the destruction and looked at his subordinate with eyes that seemed to be filled with power. "Make sure that the new mayor is smart." It might have been an obvious rule to follow, but the soldiers knew what it really meant. Their king wanted a mayor who was smart enough not to fight the kingdom. The new leader had to be afraid of the kingdom's wrath and make sure the people he or she led knew what would happen if they tried to fight back. Indra slapped the head cleaver behind him from over his shoulder, and a magnet on his platinum rank armor held the blade in place. He bowed and asked, "Of course, sir." Naruto patted him on the shoulder and walked past him, his grin slowly changing to a calm smile. He spoke to Karin. "I want 5 squads to stay back for the time being, just to keep this place in order." "Of course, sir," she said, and she gave the order through her earbud. The soldiers began to line up behind their king, and they moved closer to Iwa. Naruto tapped on his earbud and said, "Send me to Nora, the division head." "Patching you over, Lord Naruto." There was a brief buzz, and then the light voice of his head of scouting and retrieval floated over the line. "Nora's here, my lord." "Are you in the Valley of End yet?" he asked. Nora pointed at the mouth of the cave, and 5 scouts rushed in to check for traps. She slowly walked in and answered, "We just got here, sir." Calls of discovered traps and their destruction started coming through the airwaves, but this didn't stop the conversation between the king and the head of a division. Another team of scouts stormed up behind her, making sure to map out the area as they went. This was standard procedure for scouts when they were going into new and uncharted territory. One team would go ahead to find and destroy traps, while the other team would follow to map out the area. Zetsu's memories only added to what Naruto already knew. It showed him that things had been going on for a long time, longer than history could possibly record, and that things had been happening in the background. "Have you seen Madara?" The woman went into a large room with stone walls and stopped in front of a throne where a pile of bones and flesh was still sitting, connected to a big tree behind him. The person had long, white hair that covered his right eye and was so thin that it was hard to believe he was still alive. Nora just nodded once. "Yes, sir, but he's been dead a long time." "As I thought, I want his DNA sample sent to me when I get to Iwa, and I want all the information there thrown out and given to the intelligence division so they can figure it all out. Burn that place to the ground and destroy the Valley of End while you're at it, if you have to use a grand bomb." "Sir, yes sir," the woman replied. Naruto cut off the connection and said, "Take me to Division Head Hamato." "Checking you over, sir." A moment later, his head of intelligence and interrogation grunted. "Hamato here, sir." A few hours ago, he had come back to the kingdom in a retrieval vehicle. "What have you been able to learn from Obaido Uchiha?" The man took a red handkerchief from his subordinate and turned away from the dead Uchiha who was sitting on the interrogation chair. His head had been hit so hard that it caved in, and his brain was crushed into mush. He rubbed the blood off his hands and gave the handkerchief back to his subordinate. He gratefully took his trench coat and put it on. "It would take a while to give you all the details, sir. Show me the main points." Hamato walked out of the interrogation room and jabbed his thumb over his shoulder at the dead Uchiha. The soldier under his command then came in, cleaned up the room, and took the dead man away to be burned. A woman in her early 20s rushed up to him with a thin book, which Hamato read while the woman walked beside him. His ultimate plan for the tailed beasts was to combine them all, seal them into himself, and turn his Sharingan into an advanced Rinnegan, which Madara called Rin Sharingan. He signed the last page of the book and gave it back to the intelligence soldier. The woman bowed politely and ran down a hall that split off to their left. He quickly got a file from a bronze rank, which he opened. He would then bring back Madara Uchiha and reflect the Rin Sharingan on the moon to put the whole world in an advanced version of the Tsukuyomi. "Do you want me to explain what the Tsukuyomi is, my lord?" No, your report on Itachi was pretty detailed," Naruto told him. Then he shook his head. The Tsukai forces were now marching down an empty road, with a sea of red and black covering the ground for miles and miles behind them. Don't stop, this is really cool. Hamato laughed and shook his head as he circled a few key words on the intelligence report about the soldiers marching through Waterfall. Since Waterfall had signed the scroll, they could not be attacked, but the order to show that they were stronger still went into effect. The bronze rank took the report and left quickly. Madara told him that he would combine his strength with Abido's and use Madara's wood release to hold every human on the planet who was under the Tsukuyomi and drain their chakra while keeping them alive with nature chakra while they all lived in their illusions. Madara lied to Abido because he knew Uchiha and wanted something else. Hamato said yes. Yes, sir. Zetsu told Abido not to trust Madara because Madara wanted to take all the power for himself, free a great deity named Kaguya Otsutsuki from the moon, and steal her powers as well. A deity, huh? Yes, sir. And you said her name was Kaguya Otsutsuki? Yes, sir. Kaguya Otsutsuki. The king had to keep what he knew secret, but he didn't want to take the risk of keeping secrets that would have made his kingdom stronger. I gathered from Zetsu's memories that this Kaguya Otsutsuki left him on Earth as her physically manifested will, a piece of her soul, if you will. The head of the division nodded as he listened. Zetsu has been manipulating the world to break the seal on this deity, his mistress. As you said, it would take a while to fully explain what I'm trying to say, but my point is that a very powerful person is currently trapped in the moon. Hamato asked, "What do you want us to do, my lord?" In a low voice, as if their king didn't even have to move to get what he wanted. "I'm not sure yet, but I might open Kaguya's seal and take her chakra and soul. Lord Naruto, it will definitely make you even stronger. I won't decide what to do until I get Madara's DNA and Nora's report from her mission to VOA." He told Hamato as he watched Iwa ninjas storm out of the gate and attack his soldiers. "I'll let you put together your report on Abido, and I want you to see what you can learn from the information Nora and her team get from the VOA. Yes, Lord Naruto, I understand." Naruto cut the connection and started jogging steadily toward the many ninjas who were running toward them. As Indra told his soldiers to get ready, they slowly sped up their marching and moved around in their lines. Frontliners who were good at Taijutsu moved to the front, and those who were good at Genjutsu moved to the back to protect the medics at the very back. Ninjutsu experts were on the sides, protecting the rescue soldiers, and the intelligence soldiers were in the middle, out of harm's way. With the intelligence soldiers, 1,000 soldiers split off and formed their own lines, pushing the rest back. They then charged behind their king and his 2 division heads. The king lowered his head and threw his arms behind him as he narrowed his eyes. He moved quickly, like a jounin, and his division heads bravely followed close behind. Hamato held the head cleaver in his right hand, and Karin had the senbon launchers ready in her fists. The Iwa ninjas yelled their war cries, but the soldiers stayed professional and didn't make any noise as they ran over the ground with quiet metal boots towards their opponents. Naruto jumped straight forward and smashed his knee into the face of the man leading the charge. He then ran into the middle of the soldiers and left a trail of twisted, broken bodies behind him as the other Tsukai forces slammed into the Iwa ninjas without mercy. The king said, "Oh, this is interesting," as he stood on a pile of dead Iwa ninjas. His overcoat flapped in the wind as he looked up at the Tsuchikage, Unoki of the dust release, which was floating in the air. He had a smile on his face and a raised eyebrow. Naruto leaned back a little bit and quickly swept his Rinnegan eyes over the short, old cage. Around the huge pile of dead bodies he stood on, the Iwa ninjas and the Tsukai forces were still fighting hard. The armored soldiers were winning because they worked as a team, but Naruto let them fight while he and the village's cage looked at each other. Slowly, he looked down at the ground far below the man, where his red-rimmed eyes met the dark eyes of a girl who was a little older than he was. His eyes moved to her left, where a big, almost fat Iwa ninja was standing guardedly, and his smirk grew a little wider. His eyes finally stopped on a man who was much older than the 2 teens and looked a lot like the girl. The wind messed up his red, spiky hair, and he turned his head to the side and looked back at the angry cage. The edges of his lips turned up a little, and his pale face gave off a small, innocent smile that made the ninjas standing at the bottom of the pile of bodies jump back. Naruto opened his arms while keeping his hands in the pockets of his coat. He showed the other ninjas his red shirt and black pants, as well as the segmented armor on his neck and chin. This was a sign of welcome. "The whole family is here," he said as he put his hands back on his sides and looked at the older man, the strong boy, the girl, and then the cage. Ryotsuchi, Akatsuchi, Kuretsuchi, and Unoki. He looked up at the pile of ninjas under him and said, "Ryotsuchi, Akatsuchi, Kuretsuchi, and Unoki. Lord Unoki, I bet you wish you had signed the scroll when you had the chance." "Go to hell, filthy leaf scum," the man spat, and the soldiers who were pressing down hard on their opponents stopped. They put their weapons on the necks of the Iwa ninjas and held them down until they gave up. Naruto's soft smile didn't change as he turned his head and furrowed his eyebrows. "Excuse me," he said after he blinked twice and stood up, still looking at the cage with questioning eyes. "What did you just call me?" All of the soldiers held their breath as the voice of their king easily reached their ears. They killed the Iwa ninjas they were holding down and stood at attention wherever they were. Some of them flew to Iwagakure and started rounding up civilians and ninjas there. When the Tsuchikage saw that the king's shoulders were a little sore, he took advantage of it like a wolf would take advantage of an injured lamb. "You're not the only one with reliable spies. We all know you're the son of that spoiled brat, Minato." Naruto pressed his lips together and slowly shook his head. No, I know I'm my father's son, and I know he disowned me and my sister, but that's not what you said before. He slowly took his hands out of his pockets and put them at his sides, tilting his head to the right and looking into the cage's eyes. He asked again, "Unoki, what did you call me?" The man smiled savagely and said it in his own time. "Dirty, leaf, scum, Naruto's smile got a little wider, and he opened his right hand. Ryutsuchi threw up and fired at Naruto. The king grabbed the man by the face with a strong claw, and he smiled evilly at Tsuchikage, who was looking at him with wide eyes. "Am I now, leaf scum?" Hiratsuchi and Akatsuchi both cried out, "Dad." He made a fist, and the father's head exploded in his hand. Blood and brain matter soaked his black armor. The dead man's body fell off the pile and came to a stop on the ground. He never took his eyes off of her. "Answer me," he ordered. Inoki wailed, "You filthy brat," and slammed his hands together. "Wrong answer." Akatsuchi gasped and found his face in Naruto's bloody hand. He clawed and cursed in vain against the iron grip, kicking wildly, but went limp as his chakra was sucked into the king's body through the Naraka path. When Inoki saw his grandson in the hands of the teenage king, he stopped and stood there with his mouth open, ready to yell out a Kekai Genkai attack. "Answer me, Unoki." Hiratsuchi charged at Naruto with a glowing white cone of dust release growing between her hands. But the king's eyes pulsed strongly, throwing her back down the pile and driving her feet into the ground. He made the girl get down on her knees and put her hands behind her back. He then put her forehead on the ground. He never took his eyes off of the Tsuchikage. The man grunted. Soft white chakra surrounded his closed palms. Blood rushed through his body, and he yelled, "You animal." Naruto shook his head in exasperation and the teenage boy's head blasted open as he closed his fist. He gave Akatsuchi his freedom so that he could roll down and see his dead father. He rolled his eyes and threw away the blood on his right hand by flicking it to his side. "You'd think a man as old as you would also be wise. Let's try again, and I'll repeat the question in case you forgot." Hiratsuchi's body jerked up and she flew to Naruto, who caught her by the face and smiled at her while talking to the cage. "Are you sure I'm leaf scum?" She was so angry that tears ran down her cheeks and blood shot from her eyes. Naruto looked into her eyes with his fingers and enjoyed how angry she was. The cage finally took his hands out of his sleeves and held them out to Naruto as a plea. "Please don't." Naruto turned his head toward him and glared. "I won't say it again," he growled, and a gruesome crack could be heard all over the battlefield. The girl yelled. Her arms dangled limply below her, broken from her shoulders to her forearms with a particularly strong gravity crush. Naruto held her up by her face so she wouldn't fall to the ground in a heap. "You're not," Unoki yelled desperately, slowly moving toward Naruto while trying to calm the king down with his hands. "You're not leaf scum." "Very good," Naruto said, drawing out the last word, his face changing from feral to soothingly calm. "Now was that so hard?" Hiratsuchi panted painfully in his hand. Her eyes wrenched shut as she tried to think of anything other than the pain of her two broken arms. Naruto chuckled. "She's pretty sure it wasn't." "Now, please," Unoki said as he slowly moved toward Naruto and held out his hands with the palms facing up. "Please, my granddaughter." When the king put his left hand up, Unoki stopped moving and hovered in place. "Wait," he said with a smirk instead of a smile, and he turned his head to the side. "I really wanted to kill you," he said as he threw Hiratsuchi to his side, where she was caught by a gold rank before she hit the ground. The soldier, who was an expert in ninjutsu, nodded and called for a medical team to come to his location. Unoki took this chance to slap his palms together, and Naruto waited patiently, watching as the Tsuchikage pulled his hands apart and a white cube with a white center started spinning between them. He yelled, "Like hell, you're going to kill me," and sent it to Naruto. The cube of destructive dust release flew to Naruto at a speed that was so fast that it surprised Naruto a little. He stomped his foot, which slowed down the world and made the cube flash more slowly. The head of a dead Iwa ninja fell off, and the king spun on his left heel and slammed the head into the dust release cube. The head went through the cube and came out as small pieces that were broken down to the molecular level. It didn't slow the cube down, and Naruto's smirk got bigger. He jumped over the cube before it hit him in the chest, and the dead bodies on the pile rumbled, rising up and flying toward Unoki as the cage sent more dust release cubes over, barely slowing them down enough for the king to avoid them. "Stand still, brat," the man growled as sweat ran down his forehead and his hands started shaking as he tried to keep sending over dust release cubes. Naruto moved around smoothly in the air and said, "I hear your Kekai Genkai is taxing on your chakra." His curiosity got the better of him and he stayed in the path of a particularly blazing white cube of devastation. As it got about 3 feet away, it stopped in the air, surrounded by hazy blue chakra that surrounded it in a tight circle, which it bounced around inside like a ball. Naruto squinted at the cube, slowly flying around the Preta-summoned chakra containment field. Unoki's hands fell down as he gaped, out of breath. "Impossible. What should be impossible is your Kekai Genkai," Naruto idly commented as he moved back to his original position facing the cage. A combination of 3 nature transformations, one of which should cancel out the other, and strong enough to kill an army of 100 soldiers if it just touches them. The containment field started to weaken, and the white cube inside the blue circle started to bounce faster. Naruto looked from the white cube inside the blue circle to the cage, who was looking at the white cube with wide eyes. "I wonder, though, what would happen if it were somehow sent back." The blue field shrank again, and the cube shrank with it, bouncing and moving quickly. Naruto gave a half smile as he thought about a note that Orochimaru had left in Iwagakure while he was there. "Isn't the only one that can beat a person using dust release another person using dust release." The blue field disappeared, and the white cube shot out at such a high speed that it left behind a fiery trail of white chakra. Unoki held out his palms outwards, as if to catch the cube, but yelled as the white cube he had sent over compressed tightly into a smaller, more powerful dust release cube. Eat up his arm to his elbows before it dispersed as it somehow recognized its sender's chakra too late. "Loopholes, huh?" Naruto asked with a smile. His knee went up and blocked a kick from the armless man's shin. He dodged a headbutt, slid under the man to his back as another kick went for his face, and finally grabbed the man by the back of his head with his right hand and jammed his left pointer and middle fingers into the base of his skull with his left hand. Inoki's mouth dropped open in horror as his vision faded. Blood gurgled up his throat as Naruto removed his bloody fingers and drove them between the old man's shoulder blades, shutting down his chakra. Then Naruto smashed his left knee into the cage's lower back, splitting his spine in 2. The Rinnegan King and the cage were easy to keep in the air because the Rinnegan King controlled gravity to stay there. Still, the man wouldn't give up. He panted pitifully and coughed up thick globs of blood, but he wouldn't give up. He couldn't talk because his throat was so full, and blood was dripping out of his ears. His old body was shaking. "Now, I'm not going to kill you, Unoki, not now. You'll serve an even greater purpose." The cage coughed and grunted, and when he tried to swallow, he made the blood pouring out of his ears worse. He put more pressure on the old man's head, and as he tried to get away from the Rinnegan King, the old man gurgled and swayed from side to side. "You really should have signed that scroll, Unoki, but I'll be honest," he whispered with a twisty, evil grin that could be heard even far below him. "I hoped Iwa wouldn't sign." "Why?" Hiratsuchi yelled from the ground. 2 medics were busy fixing her arms, 1 for each medic, but she couldn't move because a member of the Fuinjutsu division gave her the chakra suppression seal and the body paralysis seal together. She gave the Flying King a mean look, and the doctors looked at each other, rolled their eyes, and kept healing her by moving glowing green hands slowly from her shoulders to her fingers. "Why are you doing this? What are you going to get out of it?" "A whole major hidden village under my control. A whole country under my control," Naruto told her as he slowly descended from the sky to reach her. She looked at her with a defiant glare, but when his black metal boots landed next to her, she closed her eyes and turned away, gritting her teeth because she was so scared of the red-ringed teen. "A chance for my forces to show how much better they are than Earth's best," he said as he dropped the man and knelt down next to her. The medics moved out of the way and knelt on one knee to show respect. The men who were nearby also bowed. Many reasons, Kuretsuchi, including the chance to fight a cage. Her jaw clamped shut and she refused to look at him or open her eyes. He stood up and said, "You will be the new Tsuchikage. You were smart enough to want to sign the scroll, but your grandfather was too stubborn." He walked away, and the doctors went back to fixing her broken arms. Unoki lifted off the ground and followed after Naruto, drifting through the air like a lifeless doll. "Unoki, I have something special planned for you." The king marched to a training ground, where a scout landed in front of him with a cylinder of Madara's leftover chakra, skin flakes, and a shriveled up heart, all in different parts of the forearm-long cylinder. The scout left his king, so Seibagu was left with Naruto. He looked behind him, taking his eyes off the cylinder with Madara's DNA. Tell the head of espionage and infiltration, Yuakuso. Get together all the other division leaders and start setting up camp around Fire Country. After Iron Country is taken over, we'll invade properly, and my sister should be with them." The cyborg woman nodded. "Yes, sir." As the woman started sending the message mentally while still holding the camera to record Naruto, the Rinnegan King looked down at the cylinder and laughed. Then he looked at the former Tsuchikage and laughed again. "You don't mind if I trade in your soul for someone else's, right?" It wasn't like with Naruto that Naruto had to trade Danzo's soul to resurrect her. Naruto simply wanted to make use of the impure world resurrection technique to bring the Uchiha back. A human soul exchange was still necessary. As Naruto brought Madara Uchiha back to life, a dark cloud formed over the training ground and the temperature dropped in the area. Sakura and Sai no longer used a chameleon camouflage illusion to hide their armor. Instead, they wore their silver rank body armor under their normal red shirt and black pants from the Tsukai Kingdom. The medic spy with pink hair wore blood-red kickboxing gloves, which flew behind her as she ran next to Sai with her head lowered in a ninja run. The pale, emotionless spy was holding a normal-sized pad of paper in his left hand and a wet brush with ink in his right. A red tanto was slung across his back. The two high-ranking soldiers stayed professional and quiet as they chased after a blonde-haired teen who was going just as fast. He wasn't wearing any Tsukai armor, just a short-sleeved white shirt, black pants, and black sandals, and he had bandages from his toes to under his knees and from his fingers to his elbows. His weapon of choice was a pair of short scythes that were strapped to his back and linked by a chain that went around his wrists. The chain clanked quietly as he and his teammates charged forward. Around them, carefully hidden by the thick trees of the Fire Country forests, were 25 other silver ranks and a platinum rank that raced ahead of the silver ranks in the middle. The platinum rank was a young girl in her teens with mint green hair, a healthy tan, and the standard soldier's combat uniform. She was wearing a pink backpack with drawings of unicorns and rainbows on it, which confused Junior every time he looked at it. But when she saw him looking at it, the girl just ignored him and led the fast-moving group of soldiers. Only the sound of dry leaves crunching under their feet and the wind blowing through the trees could be heard from the group. As they got closer to the capital, Meiji Haruhi Gamatomo, who was in charge of the Fuinjutsu division, gave a sign to the soldiers she was in charge of. 5 soldiers at a time rose into the air and disappeared. Sakura and Sai grabbed the gaping son of the Yondaime under his forearms, and wind blew out from under their silver boots, lifting them into the sky. The silver rank's armor rippled and merged with the midday sky, leaving only Junior to try to figure out what to do since he didn't have the chameleon camouflage illusion armor. As they got closer to the first sentry post west of the city walls, he finally had an idea. As the 2 silver ranks holding up the blonde boy got closer, Junior put his palms together and made 3 hand seals while whispering. Transformation technique. Thin smoke came out of his body, but the 2 silver ranks blew it away before the sensory detection barrier combination seal 100 yards away from the wall around the fire capital could see or feel it. Out of the chakra smoke flew a fluttering hummingbird with golden wings and beak and a dark red body. As it flew back and forth, it trembled with excitement. As it flew over the capital, the beautiful bird caught a few people's attention, but not many people stopped to look at it because everyone in the capital and the rest of the country was scared. Even though it had been a day, the video that showed what the Yondaime Hokage was really like was still fresh in the minds of the people of Fire Country. No one knew what to do with the information except cut off contact with the Hidden Leaf Village. They thought that if they talked to them, the king of the Tsukai Kingdom would punish them just as much as the Hidden Leaf Village. Several hours ago, the countries around the Fire Country sent out frantic signals, but they were all cut off almost at once before they could finish what they were trying to say. It didn't take a genius to figure out that the Tsukai Kingdom had started its global invasion. Pictures and videos showed people in different colored armor marching around the country's border and keeping a close eye on them. This would only happen if they beat their neighbors in some way. Their confused minds threw away the hummingbird in favor of building walls around their capitals and moving out of their homes into safe underground bunkers. It took the team about 20 minutes to get to the other side of the capital, where they landed quietly. 10 yards away, they flashed into view, with Junior taking down the henge. Meiji held up her right hand and made a sign over her right shoulder. 2 scouts ran past her in small gusts of wind, then came back 10 seconds later nodding their heads. The youngest head of division talked to her team through her earbud. There are 2 Konoha teams coming in, and one is led by Kakashi Hadake and the other is led by Minato Namikaze. She stopped and shot to the left, hurtling towards Kakashi, Tenzo, and Yugao, while Minato and his ninja force blew past them to the right, too focused on getting to Iwagakure to notice them. We'll take care of Yamato Tenzo and Yugao Yuzuki. Team 1, it's time to show off. Sai, Sakura, and Junior all said, yes sir. Sakura followed Junior and spoke quietly. What are you doing? Triple tandem, just like in Spring Country, using a team attack defense that Kakashi taught us. That's cool, she said with a crooked smile. Sai hopped closer to their tightly running group, their assigned escorts. 3 Fuinjutsu teams, a ninjutsu specialist team, 3 taijutsu specialists, and 2 scouts, making 1 team, dispersed into the environment, zeroing in on the group of 3 a rank jounin as they. Cooler than finding out that my own teammates had been serving my long-lost brother for the past 7 years. 8 years, Sai said, as if it didn't matter. He set us free from sound when we were 5 years old. We were just doing what Lord Naruto, your brother, told us to do. He told us to keep an eye on you in Konoha, and he told us not to tell anyone about our connection to the kingdom. Sakura whispered to her calm blonde teammate. You can complain about it later, dickhead. We have to finish our mission. Triple tandem, said Junior, and he just grunted. Hi, they both said, and then they went their separate ways. Sakura went left and Sai went right, while Junior kept running straight toward Kakashi. Junior couldn't have fought Kakashi on an even close level by himself, since the boy was just about high chunin and Kakashi was high jounin or even mid-cage level. However, the brother of the king was sent with 2 silver ranks to help him. The silver ranks were about the same as mid to high cage grounder ninjas. There were 2 of them and a mid-chunin teenager. Haruhi Gamatomo, the head of Fuinjutsu, led the charge and went straight for Yugao Yuzuki, the captain of the ANBU, who was holding a katana. The girl with mint green hair reached over her shoulders and pulled a gold and red battle fan with 12 high-level seals from her pink, girly backpack. The fan was almost too big to be real. The girl hit the older woman's sword with her iron fan, which caused a lot of sparks to fly between them. They pushed each other away, and Yugao dove back to the Magi while the girl opened her fan behind her, making dust fly all around her, and bent her knees in a ready position while holding a half ram in her left hand in front of her chest. Wind release, Heaven's crop harvester storm. She turned on her heels to avoid a cut to her neck, then swung her huge battle fan at Yugao while her hand was still in the hand seal. The Jounin ANBU swore loudly as she cut through an invisible wind sickle, hacking and slicing more and more as they came at her. Her body moved in a blur of speed. She could feel every attack from the wind coming before it hit, and she used her seal-enhanced weapon to cut through them. The woman gritted her teeth and crossed her blade over her chest as the Magi ran back to her and dropped the very heavy fan on the older woman. Yugao couldn't understand how a girl who looked so small and weak could be so mean or even strong enough to carry such a weapon. The platinum rank and the Jounin ANBU fought to see who would be the strongest. The silver ranks who were guarding Team Junior flipped and flew over the 2 women who were fighting, and their eyes went straight to Tenzo. Kakashi was blown away by a wind jutsu that Sai and Sakura had made. It was like a small tornado that blew the man off his feet and into a small glade a few yards away. Tenzo was chasing after the man when he saw 2 former Konoha genin who were also high-ranking soldiers of the Tsukai Kingdom, and were now missing, blazed toward Kakashi. It was clear that the 2 had spent most of their time as ninjas in Konoha being quiet. Sakura wasn't fidgeting or trying to fix her pink hair. Instead, her green eyes were focused and she was running at speeds a genin couldn't run. Sai didn't put on a fake smile like he usually did in every situation. The boy's eyes looked dead and hollow, like those of a mindless robot. But Tenzo knew better. The 2 silver-armored 13-year-olds were only loyal to their king, and they would rather die than not do their best on a mission their king gave them just to impress Naruto. He couldn't see Junior, but he could feel him jumping from tree to tree to get to his old teacher. The boy was definitely using his 2 sickles. The chains that connected them were wrapped around his arms and his upper torso, and they clanked together as the boy jumped from branch to branch. Tenzo skidded to a stop as a person in silver armor who he didn't know fell down in front of him. 4 more people joined them, and 5 people appeared on each side. The last 5 silver ranks stayed back as support. When the Jounin looked around, all of the silver ranks dropped into fighting styles at the same time. The Konoha ninja knew the stance because he had read about it in the library. It was called the Red Sinner Seal Master stance from Uzushio, and Seal Masters learned how to fight with it. This meant that everyone around him had to be a Seal Master. He thought it was all 25 of them. If that was true, fighting them could go either way. They could be high-level Seal Masters, maybe level 7 or 8, and seal away his chakra, making it impossible for him to use his Kekai Genkai. Or they could be bad at hand-to-hand combat and only know how to use seals, which wouldn't be that good either. I'm only going to say this once, Tenzo began, his eyes getting darker as he looked around and glared at each silver rank in a murderous way. Not a single soldier gave up. Stand down and let me get Lord Fourth's son. There's no need for needless bloodshed that can be avoided. The silver ranks didn't say anything. The only thing that happened was that two of the squads to the wood release users left and right rushed toward him, while the ones in front of and behind him spread out. The man grunted and scuffed his right toe quickly into the ground. He moved his balance point down and clapped his hands. The secret technique for wood release, the birth of dense woodland. The ground split open, and a small green tree grew out of it. A half-second later, the ground shook, and the small tree grew until it was dozens of feet tall. The big tree groaned, and its roots came up out of the ground. They grabbed the silver ranks that ran to it, and they chased after the 10 others that ran around its edges, flipping onto trees to avoid the roots. The big tree made their fighting area much bigger, so Yugao and Magi had to run away before they got caught in the roots or branches. The smaller trees were pulled out of the ground and thrown away. This made the land around them more or less flat for miles. It also gave Tenzo a chance to see Kakashi and the rest of his old team. The man bent down and got ready to jump to the man in the mask, but he fell off the top branch of the tree because it was shaky. Before he could fall to the ground, he grabbed another branch and looked down with his big eyes. At the bottom, 10 silver ranks that just touched the edges were running around the tree with big brown scrolls in their hands. When they opened the scrolls, the kanji for press was visible. Secret Tsukai technique, Fuinjutsu, undersea demon pressure. They all shouted, and the ground there snapped loudly as the trunk of the tree was pushed down. Undersea demon pressure. They yelled again, and the crack made the tree shake, causing the leaves to fall off and Tenzo to fall from the tree. The silver ranks never stopped running around the tree with the scrolls in their hands, while the 5 support seal masters rushed to Tenzo before he could land. The silver ranks who were stuck in the tree gripped their hands tightly and muttered. Then Fuinjutsu, combination jutsu, wind and fire, inflating rubber ball. Their silver armor rippled and heated up, turning a scorching red. Roots that wouldn't give up hissed with thick white steam. Even though the fire that was covering the soldiers started to spread out of their bodies, the tree wailed pitifully as it tried to hold on to its prisoners. The wood release technique was not nearly as strong as it was when the original wood release holder used it. The soldiers fell out of the trees and landed on the ground. Then, they went to help the other silver ranks fight Tenzo. As they did this, they stood back and watched as their friends slowly cut the big tree into a 4-foot cube. People in the capital had a good view of the 3 fights going on at the same time because the ground was flat, and there were no trees. Those who could see over the walls had an even better view. The daimyo thought about sending more troops, but in the end he decided not to. He needed all the help he could get to protect his and his family's lives. The ninja from Konoha were all alone. Shiny gold seal sabers grew out of the Tsukai silver ranks' forearms and curled up to their fingers, which were a foot long. Tenzo's arms fell apart, sending wooden blocks flying toward the silver ranks. With Kakashi and Team Junior, the man with silver hair sighed and looked at the person in front of him with his eyes half closed. He was leaning back in a lazy way, and his whole body gave off the vibe of a sleeping dog. Junior straightened up and looked back with courage. He shot a look to Sai and Sakura, who were in a triangle with Kakashi in the middle. The man took a deep breath and hunched his shoulders. Looks like you talked to your brother, Junior. Huh? The blonde said. I didn't get to my brother got to me. I want to be a part of the family, and the only way I can do that is. He gritted his teeth and lowered his center of gravity by widening his legs and bending his knees to almost a 90-degree angle, crossing his forearms, and gripping his twin sickles in both hands. The teen's blue eyes lit up with anger, and he growled. The only way I can join the family is to kill you, he said. If that's what you want, I won't make it easy for you, the man said firmly, looking over his shoulder at the 2 high-ranking soldiers, who were both in their different fighting stances and holding their signature Tsukai Kingdom-issued weapons, a pair of blood-red kickboxing gloves for Sakura and a red sketchbook and black brush for Sai. The man didn't need to use his Sharingan to see that both of his former students were high-ranking soldiers in their own right. He had learned from Spring and Kumo that copper was the lowest rank and that they were about as strong as an average special jounin. Bronze was next, and then silver. The jounin shut his eyes and told them. I knew you two had something to hide. Sai cocked her head. Smart man. Sakura told the blonde, we don't have time for small talk. Junior, this is your call. The king's younger brother nodded quickly. The boy said, let's do this, and his body disappeared. As the deadly sickles came down, Kakashi moved to the side and just barely missed them. He lifted his leg, and a poison ink dart hit the ground. He then backflipped over Sakura, who hit him in the upper back, between his shoulder plates, with a fist. The girl slammed her fists together, and they lit up red. She ran at Kakashi again, and Sai did the same thing behind her. The jounin took 2 kunai out of his pouch, spun them in his hands, and smashed them against Sakura's fists and Sai's black tanto. His eyes widened as they broke, and he spat out a curse as Junior came out of the ground and put chains around his whole body, from his feet to his neck. Hidden art, secret Uzumaki chains, the boy grumbled. His legs were wrapped around Kakashi's torso from behind, and his arms were crossed over the man's neck, with the sickles shining in his hands. He opened his arms and slashed deeply into the man's neck with his weapons. As the clone exploded, there was a small explosion that shook the ground. He hopped and skipped back, dodging rocks that came at him from the thick smoke. Out of the smoke, his chains came back around his arms. Sai, on it, the pale boy said, and he drew a slash in his sketchbook. A golden kanji for control lit up at the back, and wind poured down from the sky, blowing away the smoke and letting Sakura dive back in, her fists leading the way. Now that the Jounin's Sharingan was out in the open, it was spinning wildly in its socket as he fought hand to hand with the Taijutsu expert. He saw 3 afterimages of the girl as she threw punches at his face. He dodged all 3 and grunted as an invisible fist still hit him in the face, sending him flying towards Junior, who dug his heel into the man's back, sending him flying in the direction of Sai, who spun on his heel and hit the man in the face with his right elbow. When a shadow clone burst into view, it made smoke that distracted Sakura. This gave the man time to catch himself by tumbling to the ground, possibly with a broken nose. He saw silver in the corner of his Sharingan eye, so he pulled out another kunai to block Sai's tanto and gritted his teeth as it broke. He reached out with his other hand and grabbed Junior by the neck. He looked at the boy with his red eye and tried to make the boy believe a lie, but the boy crossed his sickles and whispered. Uzumaki Escape Artist was written on his back, and when his body hit the ground, it sounded like several silver chains, which then turned into chakra smoke. Above the copy ninja, a small cyclone of spinning chains formed, and the blonde fell onto Kakashi's shoulders. Sai hit the man harder with his tanto, making the man's feet slide across the ground. Sakura also hit the man hard, pushing him back. Kakashi yelled, "Enough of this," and shot white chakra at the 3 13-year-old ninjas, scattering them. As Sakura got her feet under her and was about to land, a white Susanoo arm reached out and caught her. He grabbed her in his fist and swung her at Sai, who was shooting poison ink darts at him from the back of his sketchbook, which had the kanji for darts written in gold. The artist coughed as Sakura's head hit his, sending them both a few yards away on the ground. 10 dog summons came out of the thick white smoke and chased after the 2 silver ranks. The pure white Susanoo, which was only a torso, a head, and 2 very strong arms, growled and turned to Junior, who was running next to it with his sickles and a scabbard on his back. It put its fingers together and slammed them down, but it missed the blonde as he started to look at hand seals. Manjikayo, one of the copy ninjas, saw the seals and ran after the boy with his huge arms. Water release, Kiriagakure crystal water death. He sat down and ran his hands along the ground. Inside the Susanoo, sharp blue crystals began to stick out of the ground. Kakashi flinched when a spike grazed his side. His Sharingan buzzed, and he jumped out of the white chakra thing and kicked the 13-year-old boy in the face. Junior fell and rolled around on the ground. Sakura grabbed the boy and pulled him into her arms. Her fists were covered in dog blood, and she had a purple cut on her temple where her head had hit the other silver ranks. Sai jumped over the doctor and started a fast-paced taijutsu fight with Kakashi. At the same time, his female friend put her palm on Junior's forehead and removed the spiderwebs from his head. She dropped the boy, and the blonde shot straight toward his old teacher, with Sakura following him closely. Sai faked a blow to the man's right arm. Kakashi pulled his arm back, which gave Junior a chance to drive an elbow into his side. The man grunted and kicked Junior away, leaving him open for Sakura to kick him in the back. The kick made the man spin around and spit 4 water needles at the girl, but Sakura hit him 4 times at just the right time to break all of them. Sai smashed his fist into Kakashi's unprotected back. The man gasped and turned around, kicking the black-haired boy away with a blow to the chin. Junior appeared at his side and stabbed him 7 times with his fingers. He dodged a forearm swing that would have taken off his head and continued his 7-strike attack on the other side of the man's torso. Kakashi just barely managed to stop Junior by tripping him and slamming his heel into the Yondame's son's upper back. He spat out a mouthful of blood when Sakura hit him in the back of the head with her right fist. He swung his arm at her and knocked her back, but that gave Sai a chance to make a shallow cut in the man's stomach, cutting through his flak jacket and into his flesh. He pushed the boy away with a shaky blow to his face, cursing as Sakura slammed her shoulder into the back of his left knee, picking up the king's brother from the ground and coming to a stop. She used healing chakra on his head to wake him up again, and the child ran straight at Kakashi without stopping. As the man tried to get back up, He yelped and felt the muscles in the back of his knee throb. He grunted and got back on his feet, but his Sharingan wouldn't stop spinning. He deflected Sai's Tanto by slapping it away, then grabbed the boy by the face with his claws and smashed him into the ground. He coughed up more blood as Junior poked him in the back with his fingers. He kicked Junior away with a donkey kick, but in doing so, he let go of Sai, who ran away. The group went back and forth at the man, bringing him to his knees one by one. The first few times, they let the copy ninja hit both of them to give a teammate a chance to make a critical strike. They did this over and over again until Kakashi started to lose a lot of chakra. The medic swept Kakashi's good leg, cracking his heel in the process, and ran around, letting Junior slam a fist into the copy ninja's face. Kakashi panted, his eyes seeing hazy reflections of his former students, hissing and gasping as they lowered his defenses more and more with the same team attack he taught them. The three-car train, a fist crashed into his normal eye, and a knee broke against his jaw on the other side of his face. A roundhouse kick to the ear broke his eardrum, and a backhand to the temple jarred his brain around in his head. Blurs moved around him and attacked, then moved out of the way to make room for another attack, then another, and none of them were kind. He was too out of breath to wheeze when a sickle cut through his lower back and another sickle cut a deep groove into his left shoulder before being violently pulled out. This made room for fiery red fists to hit his chest, cracking the bone. At the end, the younger brother of the king crossed his sickles around Kakashi's head. The tips of the sickles just touched each other, and Kakashi pulled his arms apart. The bloody copy ninja's head rolled back and his body fell forward. Dead. The bridge with red spikes. Town wave. Country wave. Shizune, hurry up. I want us to leave this country in 10 minutes. Tsunade grumbled as she ran across the big bridge named for the king's younger brother, carrying 2 big bags on each arm and a bottle of water in her right hand. Shizune, who was standing behind her, was struggling to carry 5 big suitcases and a small pet carrier with their pet pig, Tauntaun, inside. He was breathing heavily. The poor girl huffed and limped forward as fast as her tired legs could carry her. They had been running from Konoha for 4 hours. The plan was for Tsunade to get on a ship leaving port and sail to an inhabited island he had won in a poker game. There, he would stay out of sight until either the Yondaime killed the Tsukai King as he had promised or the Tsukai King killed the Yondaime. The last Sannin sighed as he walked through Wave, which looked like it was haunted. No matter how much Minato said he would win, he wasn't going to. Naruto just had too much power. She didn't need to be told that the red-headed man who was thought to be dead had questioned her a few days ago. Common sense would have told her that since Kiriagakure was full of Tsukai soldiers, Hot Water Country was basically a wasteland where all the natural gas was sucked out of the ground and shipped back to the kingdom. And Fire Country was surrounded by tens of thousands of Tsukai soldiers. There was no way on Earth, under the Earth, or above the Earth that she would ever be allowed to leave the continent and go to an island she hadn't been to in over 40 years. Shizune was surprised that the scouts and hunters who were all over her home country hadn't stopped them. She had seen a few of them, but they just blazed past her to another fire sentry post without being seen and may have been known to her mistress. The young doctor had tried to tell her mistress over and over again that if Kiri, which was west of Wave, and Hot Water, which was a little northeast of Wave, were both completely under the control of the Great Flying Kingdom, then Wave would not be out of the question. The country was full of fishermen and farmers, not fighters, so it would be easy to take over. Tsunade refused to listen. She could have helped, loved, and protected the twins, just like everyone else close to the Yondaime. Her guilt had kept her in Konoha as the head medic, and now that Naruto had started a full-scale invasion of the world, her first instinct was to run away from safety because Naruto would definitely come for her blood. Jiraiya, Danzo, Itachi, and Obito ... all dead. Their heads were put on spikes and put in front of the main gate of the village of Hidden Leaf. Even though she was confused and dazed, she kept a watchful, suspicious eye on everything, wondering why a busy town like Wave was empty of people. When a curtain closed, her heart rate went up. Shizune stutteringly said, "LL Lady Tsunade," and then stopped. The woman looked over her shoulder at her, and the apprentice with black hair shakily pointed past her. Almost, the Sannin didn't want to look. About 20 feet away, there was only one person, a girl with a white mask on her face and the silver Tsukai rank. The girl's hair was bright red and pulled back into a short ponytail. She stood with her hands behind her back and her chest out. She slowly lifted her right hand up, took off her mask, and set it on the top of her head. The girl's purple eyes sparkled with joy as she looked at the blonde Sannin. And Naruto. The woman gasped, her eyes wide with shock and horror, especially when a twisted, toothy grin crept onto the moon-pale face of the cute girl, and her eyes turned dark with murderous intent. But, you should be dead? The girl asked to break in. I know. Isn't my god king brother the best? The woman gasped when the redhead made a joke about her brother. She took a few shaky steps back, urging Shizune to follow her and making the girl drop her bags as she slowly moved away. Naruto cocked her head to the side. Her smirk grew into a full-blown, horrifying grin that sent shivers down Tsunade's spine, and her eyes got a little smaller. So, Lady Tsunade, where are you going so quickly? Nowhere, said the woman, gritting her teeth to get some courage as Naruto started to walk forward slowly with small steps. The scary girl said in a sweet voice, "Oh, come on, you can tell me." She groaned in frustration as a low voice whispered into her ear from her earbud. I'm good at keeping secrets, she said. You guys never let me have fun, she said. Her shoulders sagged, and she gave Tsunade a smile that was crooked. Lord brother wants me to kill you too. I'm sorry, but I have to do it. Her fists tightened at her sides, and 3 long adamantium blades slowly slid out of her knuckles and clicked into place with a smooth schling. She made a fist and pointed it at the 2 women. Her right arm was slightly straight, and her left arm was bent. She also bent her knees and put her right foot in front of her left foot, making it look like she was ready to lunge at any moment. Her eyes were blank, but her pale face was lit up by a smile. Try to fight, please. I want a fair match. It would be a pain if she killed the Sannin easily. She needed to end the fight as soon as possible so she could go to Iwa and catch the Yondaime before he got there, which would be in about 5 hours if Minato ran at a constant, blurry speed. She couldn't have fun with the Senju just because she had to catch up to her father and help hold him back from Iwa with her thousands of other soldiers. She was also supposed to get Tsunade's DNA so that it could be sent back to the kingdom for research and copying. Her current mission didn't say how the Sannin should be afterward. Instead, it was more important to kill her and get her DNA samples. The monster in her stomach, which she and her twin brother both had, snapped and spat to get out. It could only mean one thing. Both she and her brother wanted to kill someone. No doubt Naruto could feel it from her as well. She charged at Tsunade, and the Sannin just barely pushed Shizune away before Tsunade could cut her arm with a sharp blade. The woman growled and stood up, raising her fists. Naruto gave a small smile when she saw it. Good. If Tsunade Senju had to lose, she was going to fight until the end. As she ran at the adamantium monster, the last Senju opened her mouth and let out a roar. Round 25. Iwagakure no Sato, Country on Earth. A very, very long time ago, there was a little boy with red hair and an old man with white hair. The boy's home was falling apart on the inside because of civil wars and attacks from other great ninja villages. While the 3 sages fought Hanzo of the Salamander, just before they became known as the 3 Sannin, a white-haired Uchiha came across the broken body of a red-haired boy who was crying even though he was unconscious and lying in the cold, hard rain. The man's Manjikayo sharing an eye was visible, and it shone brightly in the dim lighting of the once great hidden village, where it was now. He stared down at the tangled mess of thin limbs and skin. A boy with so much potential, he said. He was a member of the Uzumaki clan, and his eyes could see the child's huge chakra reserve and track him back to the first Uzumaki he met with his old friend Hashirama. Kabuki was the 7th leader of the old clan. Some people thought he was a monster, but he was a father to the clan. Madara's eyes wandered past Nagato and he frowned at the 3 other broken but still alive bodies of what he thought were the redhead's friends. In the distance, where the 3 sages were fighting the cage, he heard a loud boom. He got down on one knee and put his middle finger and pointer finger on Nagato's head. He then sent a small pulse of chakra into Nagato's body to help him heal. He looked at the boy, then turned around and saw the big battle going on behind him. Finally, he looked at Nagato's forehead where his fingers were still on it. He quickly made a fist with his fingers, and then his pointer and pinky fingers shot out and hit the child's eyes hard. The tips of his fingers lit up red, and he pulled the child's bright purple eyes out with ease. Madara carefully opened a small canister the size of her palm. It was full of a thick fluid and 2 purple orbs that floated in the fluid. The purple orbs had black rings coming out of the center dot-like pupil. The eyes disappeared in a sharp flash. Madara slowly stood up. As he did, he heard his bones crack and felt a sharp pain shoot up his back. This was a sign that a man his age shouldn't bend down for too long. He didn't care about the pain and went backwards. I give those eyes to you, Uzumaki child, he said, and then he disappeared in a spinning vortex of air and energy. His last words echoed in the air as the little red head woke up. Your chakra will make my eyes get better. Your chakra will change, in my view. My eyes. Madara looked at the red-haired man in front of him with narrowed eyes. He was the same age as when he first faced Hashirama Senju, and he was wearing all of his armor and weapons. His battle fan was strapped to his back, and he had a tanto on his right hip and several kunai and shuriken in his hands. His body walked out of the coffin in which he had been resurrected and stopped 15 feet from the red head. A few yards away, there was no one around except for 2 gold-armored soldiers at the edge of the training ground and 2 platinum-armored soldiers keeping a safe distance next to the gold soldiers. Madara's eyes, which were probably the strongest pair of Sharingans in history, moved back to the red-haired man who had brought him back to life. He was only a child, but he was covered in black obsidian armor, which also made up his metal boots and armored hands. The cursed armor looked like it was just another layer of skin for the child. It was smooth and comfortable, like another layer of skin that couldn't be broken. From what the boy could tell, the child was also wearing black ninja pants with 2 front pockets and 2 back pockets, a blood-red shirt with the words Sky King written diagonally across the chest in gold letters, and a long coat that reached his ankles. The child was leaning back with his hands in the pockets of his coat and looking at the man with sleepy eyes. Eyes, eyes, The boy's rinnegan were coal black and had red rings. Madara wanted to laugh because he was right that Nagato was the best choice, but he didn't because he knew he was wrong. 10 minutes of deafening silence, with thick gray-black clouds slowly spinning over the training ground and a small storm bubbling up. The air was so cold that the guards on the edge had to turn on the heaters in their armor. The boy looked back at the old ninja, who looked like a real conqueror, and let him talk. "What do you do?" "My name is Naruto. You are not Nagato." The man had been watching the red-headed child for a while before he finally realized that Nagato was an Uzumaki. "Those don't look like my eyes." "I'm not Nagato," Naruto said easily, giving Madara a little bit more freedom to come up to him. The 2 big things stood still. "But he and Conan are good additions to my army," he said with a weak smile and a sideways tilt of the head. "These aren't your eyes, they're mine." As his last word left his mouth, lightning flashed in the storm clouds above them. Madara did not even flinch. "You are an Uzumaki," Naruto said. "I have Uzumaki blood in me." Which didn't mean he was part of the clan of his mother, but also didn't say he wasn't. "Is Nagato an Uzumaki?" He almost didn't want to ask. His face didn't show any worry or fear, but his hands tightened and his crossed arms got closer together. Naruto nodded. "His name is Uzumaki," the king said. He then stood up straight and looked very serious. "At first, I just wanted to take your soul and memories, but the truth is that I've always wanted to kill a legend." Before Naruto beat them, Unoki, Danzo, and Orochimaru may have been legends, but they were not the kind of legends Naruto was talking about. People made up myths and stories about Madara because he was so well known and powerful. This made him seem even more like a god than he already was, destroying an entire hidden village in one swipe, calling on demons to help him fight, using only his hands to kill a demon king. Naruto knew that not all of those stories were true, and he also knew that Madara was not a simple man. The king could feel waves of oppressive energy coming from the man's body. It was enough to make the ground groan and crack under his weight and split the rumbling sky into 2 parts. Dark red thunder clouds twisted over Naruto, and dark blue clouds spiraled over Madara. Naruto finally let go of the Uchiha. He didn't let go of him completely, but he let the man move on his own, not at Naruto's command. As they looked at each other, their powerful chakra slowly surrounded them and pushed and shoved each other like 2 snapping dragons, one red and one blue, fighting for control. Tension filled the air as Madara stared at the boy, still with his arms crossed and his back straight. He was looking down at the king, while Naruto kept his hands in his pockets and his back straight, facing a look that would kill any other man. Madara replied, "I've always wanted to kill a god." A sinister smile crept up his face, and his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan began to spin. The 2 chakra fights went on, making a raging storm that, if not stopped, would destroy the whole hidden village. "I've always," Madara began again, "wanted to kill." As soon as they said that, a demon started to grow in the chests of both of the monster ninjas. "A god? It seems that way," Naruto said with a calm smile that could be heard over the raging war of chakra that was going on between them, a thick line separating them by about 7.5 feet. "If I win, your soul is mine. If I win, I'll take your eyes." Naruto's hands became so tight in his coat pockets that they popped and turned white. The king felt a nervous, excited shiver run up and down his body, but he kept it under control, barely keeping his face from breaking into a wide-eyed, toothy grin. A crazy look that Madara also wore, though it had a hint of murder and craziness to it. The Uchiha just wanted to look into Naruto's eyes, but Naruto wanted to cry. "Madara, apart, deal." The words came easily, and the older ninja heard them clearly. He put his hands on his sides, and Naruto took his hands out of his pockets and took off his coat at the same time. The wind blew the piece of clothing toward Karin, where the medic caught it. The king put his hands at his sides and flexed them to get ready. Don't hold back. Give me everything you've got. You'll soon wish you hadn't said that, boy. Both of the fighters were so respected that they might as well have been gods. They moved into fighting positions in one fluid motion. Madara shot at Naruto. As he did, the ground cracked and opened up, and Naruto flew toward Madara, leaving a deep crater where he had been. There were two small balls of light, one blue and one red. No one could keep track of them as they ran to meet, and when they did, the sky fell over the whole training ground.
So this was it for today. I will continue this story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.